structural defect, and even the functional defects of platelets. So for this particular session, we will be enumerating the qualitative disorders of platelets and of course explain the disorders that affects adhesion, release, and aggregation. So if you notice, this particular disorders has something to do with the so-called platelet functional defects. Not only that, we will also try to tackle disorders that may affect the blood vessels or particularly the vascular endothelium. So this particular screenshot or was actually taken from Rodac. So if I were you, you could also supplement the lecture for today with the actual reading of the textbook. So actually, you are required to read your textbook. So disorders of platelet function is characterized by excessive bruising and superficial bleeding. As what I've told you, they are normally accompanied by uh, platelet count within the reference range. However, please take note that they could either be acquired or congenital. So they can either be acquired or congenital. So we will be dividing these platelet disorders into three categories according to the platelet functions. So we could have disorder of platelet aggregation. So of course, the most popular there is Glanzmann thrombasthenia. And then disorder of platelet adhesion, wherein I've already introduced to you Bernard-Sillier syndrome and the von Willebrand disease. And then um, storage or disorders of platelet secretion, such as the storage pool disease. Not only that, we will also be talking about changes in membrane phospholipid distribution and the hyperactive thrombotic prothrombotic platelets. Okay, so to start the ball rolling, it is very important that you familiarize yourself with the ultrastructure of platelets. So when we say the ultrastructure of platelets, we are looking at the important receptor sites, the important receptors, the STRs that we have discussed during the prelim period. Not only that, you also have to be familiar with the enzymes that would actually participate in the pathways. Okay, so aside from the receptor site, such as the glycoprotein 1b5, the glycoprotein 2b3a, you should be familiar with the content of the different granules. Okay, so it is also very important to recognize that majority or a significant number of qualitative platelet disorders have genetic predisposition. So meaning to say, there is actually a defect in the gene that contributes to the occurrence of various platelet disorders. Take a look at the example, the gene cluster GP1BA, GP1BB, and GP9. This particular gene cluster would be responsible for the occurrence of Bernard-Sillier syndrome. However, if you notice, there are actually three different genes, which means that these genes are actually located from different chromosomes. Say, for example, GP1BA, the defect is actually seen at the P arm of chromosome number 17. GP1BB, the defect is actually located at the Q arm of glycoprotein of chromosome number 22. The GP9, the defect is actually located at the Q arm of chromosome number 3. Not only that, you also have to determine whether the disease is inherited autosomally or is it a recessive disorder? So I have only given here Bernard Solé as an example, but if you notice, there are several genes that may be implicated for the occurrence of qualitative platelet disorder. Okay, so let us discuss the first kind of platelet disorder. I think you're all familiar with this already. So this is a Bernard Solé syndrome. So sometimes known as the giant platelet syndrome. So it is inherited genetically. So it's a recessive disorder, and it is almost always manifested during infancy or childhood, because most of the parents would actually observe hemorrhage in their hemorrhage that may occur in their child. So this particular hemorrhage is actually indicative of defective platelet function. So what kind of hemorrhage? So ecchymosis, such as the one that you can see here, and then there would be epistaxis or nose bleeding and even gingival bleeding. So the main culprit for the occurrence of this particular disorder is this defect, glycoprotein 1b9 complex in the surface of the platelet. So, because of this defect, this would disable the platelet to bind with von Willebrand factor. And as we all know, von Willebrand factor will actually cement platelets to adhere to exposed subendothelium. Okay, so there are actually two varieties of this, the heterozygotes and homozygotes. Okay, so if it's heterozygotes, there's still a chance that only 50% of the population with heterozygote trait would be affected. However, if it's homozygote, so it is always characterized by enlarged platelets, thrombocytopenia, and usually decreased platelet survival. So this may resemble von Willebrand disease. Okay. However, the difference is that Bernard Solé, unlike von Willebrand disease, is not corrected by normal plasma or by therapeutic component therapy of cryoprecipitate. So again, this is how the patient with Bernard Solé syndrome look like. So you can actually observe. Actually, this is a large-scale PTK already. So in this case, many clinicians would be calling it as ecchymosis. So what is the glycoprotein 1b95 complex? So to be more specific, when you say complex, it is a collection of different surface glycoproteins found at the membrane of the platelets. Okay, so to be more specific, this includes your glycoprotein 1bA or alpha, glycoprotein 1b beta, glycoprotein 9, and glycoprotein 5. So, however, among the glycoprotein here, the most common defect is found in glycoprotein 1b alpha. So this glycoprotein is very important because this is actually the binding sites for von Willebrand factor and thrombin. So in laboratory profile, I think last prelims, I've already shown you the aggregometer. So there is always a normal platelet aggregation if you do the aggregometry. So because they would responds positively to platelet activating agent. However, if we use ristocetin induced binding, so there would be abnormal platelet aggregation. So majority of the patients with Bernard Solé syndrome, okay, so they are being treated with antifibrinolytic therapy. such as aminocarproic acid or tranexamic acid. So this is also important, especially if we want to address gingival bleeding among patients with Bernard-Solier syndrome. Okay, and then still part of disorder of platelet function is the inherited giant platelet syndrome. So we have here different kinds of inherited giant platelet syndromes, but let me just give you what would be the common denominator. So they are characterized by large platelets. As you can see, for your reference, this is a segmenter. This is a normal RBC. Normally, platelets should be smaller than RBC, but if you can observe here, this is the platelet. So this platelet is even larger than the normal RBC. So that's the reason why sometimes we call it the giant platelet, no? So there are many examples of this particular giant platelet syndromes, and one of them is the May-Higlin anomaly. So in May-Higlin anomaly, you can see actually in the segmenters the abnormal accumulation of granules that is said to be microtubule deposition. And for Epstein syndrome, so this is an example of the Epstein syndrome, you would notice that platelets are, aside from the fact that they are enlarged, you would notice here that platelets would have spherical, prominent surface connected canalicular system. So actually, there are many kinds of giant platelet syndrome. So for example, some giant platelets are even characterized by velocardiofacial syndrome, as you can see here. So there's abnormality in the development of the facial feature of an infant with this kind of disease. Okay, however, there is actually no reported bleeding site. So again, please read RODAC because this is where we got the table, no? And then we have the giant platelets with abnormal surface glycoprotein and mitral bulb insufficiency. So it's an autosomal recessive disorder. And all of the bleedings are actually mild. However, for this one, it is characterized by ecchymosis and epistaxis. So there would always be nose bleeding, and then the skin is characterized by ecchymosis, the one that I've shown you a while ago. And then the familial macrothrombocytopenia with glycoprotein 4 abnormality. So again, I think for this one, it is a characteristic of a combined quali and quanti. Because aside from deficiency of glycoprotein 4, there is also a low platelet count because of the thrombocytopenia. So again, platelet could be as low as 45 up to however, some patients may have normal platelet count. And then the Montreal platelet syndrome. And then we have the May-Heglin anomaly, Fechner syndrome, Sebastian syndrome, hereditary macrothrombocytopenia, Epstein syndrome, and the Mediterranean macrohydrocytopenia. So all of them are characterized by mild bleeding and also characterized by the presence of giant platelets. Okay, and then let us discuss now the disorder of platelet secretions or the storage pool disease. So in this case, we are discussing the Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So it's another example of inherited recessive platelet disorder. So there are 7 genes that are implicated in Hermansky-Pudlak, and all of the defects are seen in chromosome number 19. So the main problem here is there is what you call platelet dense granules deficiency. Okay, so because of this, there is a defective functions in the lysosomes. So what will happen here is the tyrosinase, this is one of the enzymes that will be seen in patients with oculocutaneous albinism. So when you say oculocutaneous albinism, the skin is devoid of normal pigmentation. So that's the reason why there is what you call albinism. Okay? And then aside from defective lysosomal function, there is also a ceroid-like deposition. Sorry. There is a ceroid-like deposition here that can be found in reticuloendothelial system. So that's the ceroid-like deposition. So there is a marked dilatation and marked tortuosity of the surface canal connected canalicular system. So majority of the patients with Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome is always being transfused with RBC and platelet transfusions. Okay, and then we also have the Chidiac-Higashi syndrome. So another example of inherited recessive disorder trait affecting chromosome number 1. So it is also a deficiency of plate granules, and the patient is also characterized by albinism. So aside from that, the patient uh is always infected with pathogenic bacterial infection. So sometimes Chidiac-Higashi syndrome in immunology is also being considered as an immunodeficiency disorder. So what do we expect in Chidiac-Higashi? So if you will be looking at the neutrophils of the patient, so it is characterized by giant lysosomal granules. So there would also be hemorrhage. So what will happen here is that because of the lymphocytic proliferation in various organs, such as in liver, spleen, and bone marrow, there's macrophage will accumulate in the tissue. Okay, so they're not supposed to accumulate there, but they will accumulate in the tissue. Eventually, this would result to pancytopenia. So, di ba, when you say pancytopenia, all blood components are decreased. So, when you say all blood components, this would also include platelets. Because of deficiency of platelets, there would be hemorrhage. And because WBCs are also decreased, patients would become susceptible to infection. Hence, there would always be frequent pathogenic bacterial infections because of the fact that the patient's cells, the cells of the immune system of patients have markedly decreased because of this disorder. And then we also have another example of deficiency of dense granules. This is the Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome. So this time, it's an inherited X-linked chromosomal disorder. So remember, if it's an X-linked, males are always almost affected, while females are almost always the carrier of the disease. So the problem here is that the patient, okay, doesn't necessarily have the Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome protein because of the defect in because of the presence of the WAS genes, and then the WAS genes are actually found in the X chromosomes. So there would be impaired migration and eventually impaired adhesion of platelets. So there is what you call triads for the classical symptoms of Wiskott-Aldrich. Number one is susceptibility to infection. Number 2 is microthrombocytopenia. So when we say microthrombocytopenia, means that the platelet is small platelets, and at the same time, they are few in numbers. And of course, severe eczema. Okay? And during the analysis of immunoglobulin, the patient's immunoglobulin is said to be rich in IgE. So platelets would have abnormal structure and dense granules, and there is also a presence of microthrombocytes. Okay, so as you can see, PTK here is actually due to thrombocytopenia. Eczema here is actually mediated by an increase in IgE. As a result, the patients become immunodeficient. Most common would be pneumonia and other bacterial infections. Okay, B lymphoma and other cancers may also occur because of the immunodeficiency. Okay, so this is the structure, the WAS structure, the WAS protein structure. Okay, so platelets are abnormal in structure and there would be a decrease in dense granules. So there is also a presence of microthrombocytes. It is also noteworthy that if an infant or if the mother is expected to deliver patients with Wiskott-Aldrich, they should go the torch screening. It is actually a collective test for Toxoplasma, rubella, cytomegalovirus, and herpes virus. These infections are teratogenic and may eventually destroy the fetus. So the laboratory profile is decreased aggregation response to agonists. So what are the agonists? The ADP, collagen, and epinephrine. However, there is a normal aggregation response to thrombin. The most common management for Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome is through splenectomy. Okay. Another example of storage pool disease or the deficiency of dense granules, to be specific, is the TAR syndrome. So TAR is actually an acronym for thrombocytopenia with absent Radi syndrome. So it is another example of inherited, another example of inherited disorder, inherited recessive disorder. So as you can see, if you will be observing the X-ray in the bone, you would notice that the problem is the radial bone. So it is the most pronounced skeletal abnormality. So you would be able to see numerous cardiac and other skeletal abnormalities. And at the same time, there is also a problem with thrombocytopenia. So the platelets have structural defects in dense granules, and there would also be abnormal aggregation response. So megakaryocytes are said to be decreased, immature, or it may even be normal in some cases. Okay, so this time, let us proceed now. So a while ago, we've discussed the dense granules deficiency. So this time, let us proceed now to the alpha granules deficiency. So what we have here is the gray platelet syndrome. Actually, it's not literally gray, but sometimes you would actually observe bluish gray, such as in this case or in this case. So we would probably say that they are pale, okay, after staining with the right stain. So the problem here is the absence of morphologically recognizable alpha granules in platelets. So that explains the color gray platelet. So patients are actually characterized by lifelong mild bleeding tendencies, moderate thrombocytopenia, fibrosis of the marrow, large platelet uh, with gray appearance. So for laboratory tests, there is a decrease in plasma platelet factor 4 and thromboglobulin, beta thromboglobulin. So the management for these patients would be the administration of cryoprecipitate and desmopressin acetate. And then this disease originated in Canada, in Quebec. So what this is one of the states or in Canada. So it's a dominant inherited disorder. But for this case, you'll be able to see a deficiency in multimarine. So what is the characteristic of Quebec disorder? So you'll be able to see aggregates of giant platelets. So you would observe aggregates of giant platelets. And the reason for this is a deficiency in multimarine. So this is the one that causes aggregate in giant platelets. So multimarine is a protein that is stored complex with factor 5 in alpha granules. Okay, and then we also have here the thromboxane pathway disorder. So it is a aspirin-like defect. Okay, so aspirin and another drug called ibuprofen. So if you're familiar with Advil, Alaxan, so that's the generic name of ibuprofen. These drugs can inhibit cyclooxygenase. So I've explained to you last prelims the cyclooxygenase pathway. So if cyclooxygenase is inhibited, this will also inhibit thromboxane. As a result, there is a decreased aggregation response. However, the ultrastructure and even the granular contents are still normal. So the problem here is decrease in aggregation response. So you've taken too much of these drugs. Okay? And of course, deficiency of glycoprotein 1A, 2A, and glycoprotein 6. Siguro before we discuss this, let us take a look how they would function. So the glycoprotein 1A, 2A, the one that you can see here, and then the glycoprotein 6, the one that you can see here, they are important for platelet adhesion and activation. So this is important prior to platelet aggregation. So some patients may possibly lack glycoprotein 1A, 2A, and glycoprotein 6. So what will happen? As you can see, diba, this is an important step. This is an important step before you achieve platelet aggregation. So since you do not, some patients may not have glycoprotein 1A, 2A, also known as the alpha 2 beta 1 integrin. So there would be abnormal aggregation response to collagen. And because of that, platelet will not adhere to collagen. So these patients would have lifelong mild bleeding disorder. The same thing with glycoprotein 6. They have the same, almost the same function as you can see here. So patients would also have mild bleeding, abnormal aggregation, and adherence response to collagen. So in some cases, this may be associated with gray platelet syndrome. Okay. So some patients may possibly lack ADP receptor. And what is the importance of ADP receptor? So take a look. So ADP is the receptor for both your P2Y1, okay, and the P2Y12. Okay. So P2, this is supposed to be Y. P2Y1 mediates calcium mobilization and shape change in response to ADP. On the other hand, P2Y12 is important because for microscopic platelet aggregation whenever they are coupled with adenylate cyclase through G inhibitory protein complex. So if you do not have the ADP receptors, you don't have the receptors for ADP. So there would be decreased for platelet aggregation. And however, in some cases, you may still have pag ito naman yung kulang mo, the platelet shape change and calcium mobilization may not be functional. Kasi yun yung function ng P2Y1. Okay? Pero hindi naman affected yung aggregation because it is the P2Y12 that is important for platelet aggregation. Nonetheless, there would be mild bleeding for the patient, and the treatment would be platelet transfusion. Okay, Scott syndrome is another example of recessive inherited disorder. It is a disorder of calcium-induced membrane phospholipid scrambling. So what will happen here is that neonates would have mild bleeding, and then Stolmorken syndrome is another inherited disorder. Okay, so perhaps it is your first time to have heard of the Stolmorken syndrome. Okay, so Stolmorken syndrome means that the platelets are always activated. So if the platelets are always activated, of course, once platelets are activated, the lifespan becomes very low. So of course, kapag lagi siyang activated, kahit wala naman bleeding, this can actually result to thrombocytopenia. Okay, and patients would always have headache, and then patients sometimes would have dyslexia. Kaya dyslexia means there is difficulty in reading and and spelling. And so, and it is also characterized by hyposplenism. So yun yung characteristic ng Stolmorken syndrome, no? So one of the most common is meiosis. Kaya siguro ito yung pinakitang picture, no? Meiosis is actually a permanent constriction of the pupil of the eye. Okay, so that is the characteristic of the Stolmorken syndrome. Okay, so let us now discuss the disorder of platelet aggregation. Of course, we're all familiar with Glanzmann thrombasthenia. So Glanzmann thrombasthenia is an inherited recessive disorder, and it is associated with abnormal clot retraction time. So you will be doing this in the laboratory. So it is characterized by petechiae, purpura, the one that you can see here. This is an example of a purpura, menorrhagia, gastrointestinal bleeding, and hematuria. So what's the problem? The problem is this. You don't have enough, or some patients may have deficiency or abnormality in glycoprotein 2B3A or the integrin alpha 2B and beta 3. So before we go further, let us review. So this is the glycoprotein 2B3A. So normally, this should actually stimulate platelet aggregation when combined with fibrin or fibrinogen. Okay, so deficiency of glycoprotein 2B3A would result to Glanzmann thrombasthenia. Okay? So ito naman, yung kulay green na nakikita nyo rito, ito yung glycoprotein 1B95 complex. Ito naman yung von Willebrand factor. So deficiency in in glycoprotein 1B95 complex results to Bernard-Soulier syndrome. So it is a platelet adhesion disorder. However, in order for the glycoprotein 1B to be bind with subendothelium, kailangan niya ng von Willebrand factor. So some patients may not possibly have it. So the patient would have the so-called von Willebrand disease. So for this portion, we will be concentrating on glycoprotein 2B3A complex. So glycoprotein 2B3A complex, again, is a deficiency of glycoprotein 2B3A complex is known as Glasman thrombasthenia. So if it's a homozygous deficiency, there is a serious bleeding manifestation. But if it's a heterozygous trait, so 50 to 60% of the patient carrying this trait may still be normal, and some of them may even be asymptomatic. Okay, so what happened here is, of course, the pro alpha 2b in the megakaryocytes is complex with beta 3, okay, in the endoplasmic reticulum, and this accumulates in the Golgi body. And this is the reason why instead of being in the surface, dapat kasi itong mga to nasa surface ng platelet. Pero nag-deposit lang siya sa Golgi body. Kumbaga guys, hindi nakalabas. Hindi nakalabas yung receptor na yan. And because of that, hindi ka nakalabas yung glycoprotein na yan. And because of that, nagkaroon na ng Glanzmann thrombasthenia. Okay. However, there are some cases that we may have an acquired thrombasthenia. So ang tawag dito is thrombasthenia-like state. So this happens when you develop autoantibodies against glycoprotein 2B3A. So this time, it is a form of autoimmune disease. The most common scenario where this happens is in multiple myeloma, wherein the paraprotein is directed against glycoprotein 3A, and it is also characterized by a fibrinogenemia, or the absence of fibrinogen. So the laboratory profile of patients with Glanzmann thrombasthenia is characterized by normal platelet count, normal platelet morphology, lack of platelet aggregation in response to all platelet activating agents, induced release secretion reaction by stimulation with strong agonists, and normal platelet aggregation with ristositine. Ristositine only, but not with other agonists. So, in continuation with the laboratory profile, there is also a decreased platelet procoagulant activity, particularly the platelet factor 3 test. So there would be fewer microvesicles, and the prothrombin will bind directly to 2B3A. So Glanzmann's thrombasthenia platelets are activated by thrombin to a lesser degree than normal platelets. Okay, so to manage the disorder, so there should be a transfusion of normal platelets. However, as a precaution, this normal platelet should have been pre-stored, leukocyte reduced, and HLA matched. So the purpose why we have to observe this is to prevent um, allogenic cells uh, rejection. So kailangan ito yung mga requirement. Okay? Hormonal therapy can also be for some patients. So this particular hormone is norethindrone acetate, particularly in response to patient with menorrhagia. Okay. And then some patients should also be receiving the antifibrinolytic therapy, such as aminocaproic acid and tranexamic acid to address gingival hemorrhage. Some patients may even be receiving a recombinant factor 7A. So particularly if the patients are refractory to platelet transfusion with or without platelet antibodies. So ibig sabihin, patients are not reacting well whenever they are being transfused with platelets. So this would enhance thrombin generation after activating factor 10. Okay, so again, qualitative platelet disorder can also be acquired after ingesting drugs. Some of them can inhibit um, cyclooxygenase pathway. Pero tandaan, aspirin is irreversible, while drugs such as naproxen, ibuprofen, so most of these drugs are anti-inflammatory, they're still reversible. Some of them can inhibit ADP, can target ADP, such as the clopidogrel and prasugrel. So actually, yung mga patients that are at risk of having ischemic disorder, they are being given clopidogrel and prasugrel. Okay, so that's irreversible, while ticagrelor and cangrelor are still reversible. So if you want to target thrombin, Borapaxar are being given to the patient. If if the glycoprotein 2B3A are targeted, it is maybe due to administration of acbisizumab, eftifibatide, and tyrofibam. And sometimes phosphodiesterase are also being targeted by dipridamole and agrenox. Okay, so these are drugs that would prevent platelet aggregation. Okay, so let us now discuss the vascular disorders or the qualitative platelet vascular disorders. Okay, so when you say vascular disorders, the problem is not anymore within the platelets, but platelets are still affected. Okay, so again, blood vessel plays a very important role for the normal function of the platelets. Although these are not disorder of platelets, platelets would still be affected. So there would be normal lab profile of platelets, and even the coagulation factors are normal. The diagnosis of these patients are based on medical history and is made by ruling out other sources of bleeding disorders. So, what are the telltale signs that you have a vascular disorders? Number one, if you've noticed that you bruise yourself easily, you bleed spontaneously. So, palagi na lang nagbi-bleed yung gums mo, palagi na lang nagno-nosebleed. Okay, so that's a clinical sign of a vascular disorder. So these vascular disorders are categorized into three. So we have the acquired vascular disorder. So it could be due to allergy or deficiency in vitamins or kapag tumatanda ka na. Okay? And then we have the hereditary vascular disorder. Of course, this one is genetically predisposed. And the purpurus of unknown origin. Okay, so let us discuss first the hereditary vascular disorders. So first in our list is called hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia, also known as the Rendu-Osler-Weber syndrome. So it is characterized by an inherited dominant disorder. So what you would notice here is that the blood vessel of these patients would have a very thin wall and with discontinuous endothelial cells. Because of that, blood will easily ooze out of the blood vessel. Manipis na nga, hindi pa kumpleto yung endothelial cells. Kumbaga, kapag gumawa ka ng pader sa semento, hindi sapat yung hollow blocks. Okay, so yun yung ibig sabihin nun. And inadequate smooth muscle or inadequate or missing elastin in the surrounding stroma. So what will happen to the patient kapag ganito pala yung blood vessel niya? You would notice that bleeding occur all throughout the body, in face, in lips, in tongue, in conjunctiva, in nasal mucosa, in fingers and trunks, and even under the tongue. So this is what you would be observing with this patient kapag meron siyang tinatawag natin na Rendu-Osler-Weber syndrome. So the lesions blanch when pressure is applied. So parang mabilis magpasa, no? Usually manifest by puberty or progresses throughout life. Yan. So kapag meron kayong nakita na loved ones niyo na merong ganito, so one of the things to consider bleeding all over the body is the Rendu-Osler-Weber syndrome. Okay? So as you can see in the previous picture, so it is characterized by the cherry red hemangioma. So common in older men and women. Ataxia telangiectasia, this is the Lewy Bowyer syndrome. The chronic actinic telangiectasia, so the eyes are affected. The chronic liver disease and pregnancy. Okay. Another disorder that we have here is the hemangioma thrombocytopenia syndrome, so also known as the Kasabach-Merit syndrome. So as you can see here in the picture, this one is characterized by giant cavernous hemangioma. So thrombocytopenia and bleeding diathesis. So kita nyo naman yung patient, kawawa naman, no? So the complication is that there would always be an acute or chronic disseminated intravascular coagulation. So sequestration of platelets in the hemangioma. So platelets are easily destroyed whenever they pass through this hemangioma. Hemangioma is actually the bleeding in the vessel. Kasi ang ibig sabihin ng angio is blood vessel, no? And it is also characterized by macroangiopathic hemolytic anemia. So ang ibig sabihin, whenever RBC passes through the hemangioma, they are also easily destroyed. Yan. Because of that bleeding, nag-swollen na yung lower extremity ng patient. Okay, so this is a Kasabach-Merit syndrome. Again, it's not a platelet disorder. It is a disorder of the blood vessel. And then we have here the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So this one is another example of inherited dominant recessive X-linked disorder. This time, there would be a defect in collagen. So not enough collagens, production structure or cross-linking, and this results to inadequacy of connective tissue. So this disorder is characterized by hyperextensible skin, hypermobile joints, joint laxity, fragile tissues, and bleeding tendency. Yan. So tingnan nyo tong skin niya, oh. Extensible skin. Ayan. So ano pa? Joint laxity, hypermobile joints, fragile tissues, and bleeding tendencies. Okay. So kanina is the hereditary vascular disorder. Now let's discuss the acquired vascular disorder. So for the acquired vascular disorder, we have the Hinoch-Schönlein purpura allergic purpura. So as the term implies, is allergic anaphylactoid purpura. So it is characterized by allergic manifestations. So when we say allergic manifestations, so this include skin rash and edema. So it is acquired because it is associated with what you consume, such as food, drugs, even the presence of cold temperature, insect bites, or even vaccinations can actually induce Hinoch-Schönlein purpura. So what you would observe here is that there is an acute IgA-mediated disorder with widespread generalized vasculitis. So pag sinabi natin vasculitis, it is the inflammation of the blood vessels. So this would involve the skin, joints, kidneys, gastrointestinal tracts, and less commonly the lungs. So physical manifestation, makakita kayo ng skin lesions confused with hemorrhagic crush and immune thrombocytopenic purpura in almost all parts of the body. So ganito yung makikita ninyo sa mga patients na merong Hinoic Schönlein purpura. So it affects children between 3 to 7 years of age, though more common in males. So sometimes it is known as the palpable purpura and itchy purpuric lesions. So makatito on the part of the patient. Kaya pag minsan nagsusugat din kapag palaging kinakamot ng mga patients. Okay? The Hinoic Schönlein allergic purpura is characterized by proteinuria and hematuria. So ibig sabihin, proteins would pass through the glomerular filtrations. Okay, so normal platelet count and blood coagulation test. However, there is an increase in WBC and ESR, indicating that there is indeed an inflammation. And then, another example of acquired platelet disorder is paraproteinemia. It is a platelet function that can be inhibited by myeloma protein. So, paraproteinemia, just so to give you an example, during serum electrophoresis, we expect gamma globulin, as you can see here, yung blue yung normal, we would expect gamma globulin to be very low in amount, not as high as the beta and the alpha globulin. However, for patients with conditions such as paraproteinemia, you would expect their gamma globulin to be increased. So this is the appearance of the serum electrophoresis of patients with paraproteinemia. So what does it mean? So means that there would be increase in antibodies such as IgA. Okay, I remember antibodies are made up of gamma globulin. Because of that, there is coating of the platelet membrane with paraprotein. So the platelet membranes are being coated with these abnormal proteins. And of course, if the membranes are coated, you won't expect to have proper or normal platelet aggregation, secretion, and procoagulation activity. So whenever concentration of paraprotein is increased, because these paraproteins inhibits normal platelet aggregation, patients would have severe hemorrhagic manifestations, hyperviscosity, and platelet dysfunction. So again, this is also associated with IgA myeloma, Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia, and IgG3 myeloma. So again, these are actually increase in the presence of these antibodies, which could exhibit platelet function abnormalities. So paraproteins would also inhibit fibrin polymerization. So as a result, there would be pure correlation between abnormal results on laboratory tests and evidence of clinical bleeding. So how do we treat it? So we treat this one with therapeutic plasma exchange. So you'll get normal plasma from normal individuals. So another example of acquired vascular disorder is amyloidosis. So here, you would expect to have deposition of abnormal quantities of amyloid protein in tissues. So what are amyloid proteins? Amyloid proteins are fibrous proteins with rigid linear non-branching aggregated fibrils. We do not want this to accumulate because there are even studies that excessive accumulation of amyloid proteins among among elderly people can also result to Alzheimer's disease. Okay, because it impedes with the normal brain function. So that's the reason why it is maybe this may be categorized as primary, secondary, or localized or systemic. But in the context of platelet disorder, too much deposition of amyloids is characterized by purpura, hemorrhage, and thrombosis, and this is indicative of abnormal platelet function. And the last vascular disorder for today is senile purpura. So senile occurs more commonly in elderly men as compared to elderly women. And why do we call it senile? So being senile is related to elderly, or I mean to old age. However, this could be stereotyping because because if you're old, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be senile. However, physiologically, if a person becomes old, he or she may be deficient with collagen, and this collagen would support small blood vessels. And because of that, there would be loss of subcutaneous fat and elastic fibers. Okay? So there would be dark blotches are flattened and they do not blanch with pressure and resolve slowly. And oftenly, they would leave brown stain in the skin, as you can see here in the picture. Though the lab results may normal, but the fragility testing would be increased. So meron tayong tinatawag na capillary fragility test that we are testing to determine the vascular function. So there is no other bleeding manifestation. So ito nga, makakita lang kayo ng mga dark blotches that are flattened. So acquired vascular disorder can also be associated with the intake of aspirin, warfarin, barbiturates, diuretics, digoxin, methyl dopa, sulfonamides, and iodides. And that ends the qualitative platelet disorder.